Past the safety of Majula, you enter the path towards the Hyde's Night Tower of Flame, from which, if you survive that, which you should, it's like only the second area of the game, you'll come to No Man's Wharf. The deadly Varangians are stalking the area, fierce marine warriors, pillagers, who were captured by King Vendrick and forced into service to work the docks, where the undead are shipped to the Lost Bastille. It's the Varangians who I'm focusing on in this video, because they are real, and they're even cooler than who they are in the game. The Varangians were Vikings, and the name derives from what the Greeks and Slavic people would call them. The Varangians sailed from the north and made up a group called the Rus, and settled in what is now modern Russia and Ukraine, and ruled over the native Finnic and Slavic tribes. The ruler was Rurik, a legendary figure in Russian history, as he founded the political dynasty that controlled this region. The Varangians, however, were soon driven away from collecting taxes on the locals, but only for Oleg, Rurik's relative, to come and conquer Kiev and establish the Kievan Rus, whose dynasty would continue on until the 16th century, although it is said that other princes would all come from Rurik's bloodline. The Varangians and Rus would slowly assimilate into Slavic society in the 11th century, but they played a huge role in Slavic history, as the Varangians unified many Slavic tribes, conquered huge swaths of Khazar land, and established a bountiful trade route after the wars with the Byzantines, which solidified the Kievan Rus as a booming trade region, bringing prosperity to this region. The Varangians would also form the Varangian Guard in the Byzantine Empire. Now, how this happened was that the newest ruler of the Kievan Rus, Vladimir I, had just seized control and converted himself and his region to Christianity, and allianced himself with the Byzantines, the ones who converted him, and had also one of the most powerful empires of this time period. Now, part of the alliance meant sending Varangians as guard to the king, as the Varangians were known to swear allegiance for life, as well as being less likely to shift in allegiance than hiring fellow countrymen. Now, the Varangian Guard, as they were soon to be called, were personal bodyguards to the king, and also partaked in many crucial moments in the Byzantine Wars, being used as kind of a catalyst at an important turning point in the middle of battle. Slowly, the Varangian Guard was to be made up of more and more Germanic tribes and Anglo-Saxons, and any Varangians living in the Byzantines would slowly become assimilated into the Byzantine Greek culture. Perhaps the Dark Souls game, where the Varangians are working for King Vendrick, is a reference to the Varangian Guard, who are working for the King of Byzantine. Now, let's look at the Varangians themselves. Wielding is what appears to be a sword and a round shield, although Varangian sword hilt doesn't resemble anything of the Viking sword hilts found through excavation, but that's a story for a different time. They also wield the sea bow, which in game says that it's used for hunting sea monsters. This appears to what is a war bow, which during the Age of Vikings was made of yew, ash, or elm, and the Varangians were known to have been skilled hunters and bowmen themselves. Now the armor, that's where it starts getting a little more interesting. The helmet is clearly emulating the Vikings, with its horns, even though the horned Vikings never exist. The idea of horned helmets comes from 19th century poets. Darn you, poetry, ruining everything. The helmet itself is what's called a nasal helmet, and it's just a rounded helmet with a nasal, which is that little thing that goes past the eyes, protecting the nose. It was an extremely popular helmet during the early medieval age and the Viking age. Really, if you just remove the horns, it'd be an actual accurate helmet from the time period. Now, the armor itself is a type of curaboli, is the best way I can pronounce it because it's Latin, or boiled leather. Now, the armor in the game appears to be made entirely out of leather, and there's no real knowledge as to whether Vikings wore actual pure leather armor for a couple of reasons. One being the lack of depictions and drawings, and two being the fact that we haven't really found much leather, considering the fact that it deteriorates much faster than metal. Although we have found leather, most likely it would be attached to chainmail, or just gambesons or any other kind of armor the likes, or perhaps it was just they wore leather jerkins, not so much full leather armor per se. The other thing the Varangians use are the vambraces, which were actually not worn by infantry, because it offers no actual protection and would probably add cost to the uniform. That's right, Roman movies. Stop adding those leather braces to the wrist of the Romans. They didn't exist. They were used, however, by archers. See, when you pull back a bow and the string, it swings forward, but it also swings back straight into your wrist, and it hurts a lot, which is the reason that these Varangian cuffs might have been worn by the Varangians, because they do use the sea bow, which is, as I established, most likely a war bow. And another detail about the Varangians is that they sport these very long, thick beards, as Varangians in real life did as well. The Varangian enemy in Dark Souls weren't just cliched Vikings shoved into the game, and as they were real-life settlers, sailors, and warriors with a rich and unique history with their own story to tell. And it's always great to see video games borrowing from history like this. As always, if you liked the video, feel free to subscribe and leave a like down below. If I left out any important detail or anything you want to leave a comment. If you perhaps have an idea for a video, leave a comment. Hit that notification button if you did subscribe, and I'll see you next time on whatever I decide to upload on this series.